Chapter 1. Samantha Ross locked the door of her clinic to head into Culpepper, Wyoming. She had heard there was a new bookstore in town, and she was willing to forego her daily burger at Bob's Burger Barn to go there and see what she could see. She wasn't expecting anything along the lines of a Barnes and Noble, of course, because it was in a small town, but hopefully, it would at least have a nice little romance section. She couldn't express how excited she was at the idea of holding real books she'd never read in her hands again, and not just her Kindle. She was halfway there when she realized she had to have lunch anyway. Thankfully, the Burger Barn and the new bookstore were side by side. She parked in the Burger Barn parking lot and then rushed inside. Bob was there, looking grumpy as usual, and she hurried to him. "Can I get my usual but to go?" Bob nodded, writing down her order. "Sure. Megan's supposed to see you this week, right?" Sammy nodded. "Yeah. I can't believe you two are expecting again already." She grinned at him. Sammy was the local midwife in Culpepper, and her older sister, Tabby, was the OB-GYN. They often helped each other out. "I can't either. Of course, I wasn't expecting little Bethany, so what do I know about anything?" Bob couldn't help but grin when he mentioned his little girl, transforming his usually grumpy face. Sammy grinned. "It'll be nice that they're so close together. They'll be friends." "I sure hope so." Bob shook his head. "Having to be the best friend of an 18-month-old girl is hard. I spend more time burping baby dolls than I do making burgers." "Sounds about right." She glanced at the time on her phone. "I'll be back in about 30 for the burger. I have a real ache in me to check out the bookstore next door. I'm so excited that Culpepper finally has a bookstore." "Enjoy yourself. Your food will be ready." Sammy handed him a 10, knowing the food would cost around 7. "Keep the change." With those words, she hurried out the door. She had to see what books were there. The sign above the bookstore read, "Barry's Books." She grinned, taking a deep breath before pushing open the door. She knew in a moment she would be assailed with the scent of books, real books, and she couldn't wait. She pushed the door open and stood just inside for a moment, filling her senses with the look, feel, and smell of a bookstore. "Whoever Barry is, I already love him," she mumbled softly enough for her ears only. From right beside her, she heard, "You do you?" The voice was deep and masculine and scared her half out of her mind. Sammy jumped, her hand going to her chest. "Where'd you come from?" "You scared me." "I was working on a display right there," he said, pointing to a spot right behind her, right next to the front door of the shop. "I'm Barry Hamilton, by the way. Since you love me now, you should know that I'm the one you love." "So nice to meet you, Barry. I'm Sammy Ross." She tried to hide her embarrassment at him hearing her, but she knew that her blush had nothing. "Nice to meet you, Sammy Ross. What kind of book can I interest you in?" he asked. "I have new and used in just about every genre imaginable." He rubbed his hands together, obviously excited to help a customer. Sammy's face lit up at the prospect of all the books she could look through. "Romance. I want all the romance you've got." Barry grinned. "Well, Valentine's Day is tomorrow. I'll pick you up at 7, and I'll show you real romance." She laughed softly. "I think you know I meant romance books, but I'm going to take you up on that date now, and you're going to run for the hills." He was incredibly handsome, and she was ready to spend some time with him. "Have you looked in a mirror in the past 10 years? No man is going to run for the hills at the idea of dating you." He pulled his phone from his pocket. "Sammy Ross. Address and phone number, please." She immediately recited her address and phone number, wondering what was going on with this man. "Now, books." He laughed. "You came here for books and not for me?" "I didn't know you, but I'm intimately acquainted with books." Intimately, huh? I wouldn't mind being intimately acquainted with you. She blushed again, shaking her head. I'll just wander around then, shall I? I couldn't make you do that. Let me show you to the romance section, small though it is. I'm sorry to say, I'm not much of a connoisseur of romance novels, so I never know what to get. You need a female partner to help you with these things. Are you looking for a job? He asked, winking at her. No, I'm a little too busy for that. I'm the local midwife. His head tilted to one side. Midwifery? Really? Yes. Really. My sister is an OB/GYN. We share a clinic and work together a lot. If I get a complicated case, they see her. Interesting. He led her to the romance section and waved at it. Here's my ridiculously small romance section. If you just give me a list of your favorite authors while we're out tomorrow night, I'll make sure I carry them. Sammy grinned at him. You don't really have to take me out tomorrow night. I'm sure you have better things to do for Valentine's Day. The man was, well, sexy, didn't begin to cut it. His muscles seemed to have muscles. Her fingers ached to touch him. I don't. I just moved to Culpepper 3 weeks ago. I don't know anyone, so you're it. You're not going to back out and leave me all alone for my first holiday in town, are you? She laughed. No, I won't. And I want to talk to you all day, but I need a book first, so go away, and I'll see you tomorrow night. Barry looked at her for a moment before laughing aloud. You're something else, Sammy Ross. She winked at him and turned away, her entire mind on romances now. How much of her lunch hour had she spent flirting? Way too much, she was afraid. She dug through the books, and 20 minutes later, she was at the cash register with 10 different books. She gave him her debit card to ring them up. Thank you so much. I'm so glad we finally have a bookstore in town, but I have to say, your romance section is more than a little pathetic. I'll help you with that. It can't be too bad if you found 10 books. I'm a voracious reader. What can I say? She took the bag of books and waved at him. See you tomorrow night. Barry stood watching the front door of the shop, smiling. Sammy Ross was something a lot more special than she or anyone in this town could possibly realize. He was going to keep her. Whether she knew it and liked it or not. Asterisk. Sammy was still thinking about Barry when she got back to the clinic for her next appointment. One of her favorite writers, Jolene Gold, was expecting her second child, and she had decided to go the midwife route this time. Sammy put her taco burger and fried cheese curds in the microwave to keep them warm while she examined Jolene, whose real name was May. At the end of Jolene's appointment, Sammy smiled. You're doing great. Just keep doing everything you've been doing. Are you taking your prenatal vitamins every day? Except when they make me throw up. Sammy frowned. Are you still throwing up a lot? You're in the middle of your second trimester. I did the same thing when I was pregnant with Bobette. I do the all-day sickness for 9 months thing. I think this is going to have to be our last child, because I can't keep doing this. And here I was going to ask you when your next book would be out. Jolene laughed. Well, since I have a full-time nanny, I would say the middle of next week. You're a superhero, riding through your morning sickness this way. Sammy smiled. I can talk to Tabby about getting you something for the nausea. I never took anything last time. I'm not sure I want any drugs in my system while I'm pregnant. Jolene shrugged. What would you do if you were pregnant? Well, as a midwife, I don't like any drugs at all during pregnancy. I probably wouldn't take anything if you have the ability to power through. I know how many books you write, though, and I don't want you to get stressed about falling behind. Jolene sighed. I think I can power through. I will be announcing the pregnancy on my social media soon, And then everyone will just tell me to do what I can. My fans are amazing. All right. I'll see you in a month, then. You let me know if you change your mind, and Tabby will see you. I don't think I'm going to, but thanks. Jolene reached into her purse and pulled out a book. I thought you might like this. Sammy's eyes grew wide. Sammy's story? It's about me? Jolene nodded. Sure is. I dedicated it to you as well. Sammy threw her arms around her patient and favorite author. You're the best. Have I told you yet how much I love you? I'll see you next month. Jolene left with a grin on her face, and Sammy flipped to the dedication. For Samantha Ross, thank you for always taking such good care of me. You're the best midwife a romance writer could ask for. Sammy sniffed as she walked back to the microwave for her lunch. She had 15 minutes until her next patient arrived. She opened the book and started reading, doing her best not to get any of her taco burger on it. Asterisk. Just before it was time for her to close for the day, her sister popped her head in from her clinic. How'd everything go? Need me for anything? Sammy shook her head. Not really. I mean, I might need you to take a look at May Bodefeld, she said, carefully remembering the woman's real name. She's got all-day sickness, and is halfway through her second trimester. Other than that, everything is pretty routine. She probably needs some meds, if she'll take them. Tabby came all the way into the clinic, and Sammy smiled at her sister's huge belly. She was due soon, and Sammy would have the privilege of delivering the baby. She told me she doesn't want to take anything, and she's going to try to power through. I know she's working all the time and not giving herself a rest at all, though, so I think she might eventually need you. Sammy patted her examining table, and Tabby laboriously climbed up. How are you feeling? Tabby shrugged. I'm not feeling anything unusual. Just ready for the baby to come, and I am doing all the normal nesting stuff. Are you looking forward to your shower on Saturday? Sammy asked, her hands going to her sister's stomach. Absolutely. I'm so excited. I'm glad we decided on just a female shower. Arch and his buddies are going to go off and do something manly. Don't ask me what, because it sounded tiresome to me. Sammy grinned. I think they're going to Austin's bar for a dart tournament. Colby asked Austin to do it, and you know how tight those two are. So they're setting up prizes and an entry fee and everything. They can have their fun, while we have ours. Sounds good to me. Who made the cake? Who do you think? Grace Wells. Is she doing one of her famous belly cakes? Yup. She was sure that would fit you nicely. Sammy didn't mention that the belly would have a stethoscope on it, because she wanted Tabby to be at least a little surprised. How is her little boy doing? Are she and Marcus still happy? Oh, yeah. I watched Baby Joe the other night. He's so much fun. You need to get married and have babies of your own, Sam. I worry about you always being alone. Tabby was wearing her big sister face, but Sammy just shook her head. Are you going to arrange for me to marry? Like I did for you? Sammy referred to the wedding she'd tricked her sister into. No, I wouldn't be so presumptuous. But you haven't dated in forever. Tabby frowned at Sammy. You've never really dated, have you? I have a date tomorrow night, Sammy said softly. Barry, the guy who owns the new bookstore next to Bob's Burger Barn. Really? Is he taking you dancing? I sure hope so. Sammy grinned. I don't know what we're doing, but he's picking me up at 7. Are you done worrying about me? Tabby frowned. I think I might have to have Arch check him out. Arch is not my keeper, and neither are you. Get a grip and let me live my life. Sammy knew her words were harsh, but Tabby had been on her to find a boyfriend and marry since she'd gotten married a little over 2 years ago. She needed to back off and let Sammy live her own life. Fine. I'm not going to say anything else about it. Tabby didn't look offended, but she looked like she was scheming. God help me. I mean it, Tab. I don't want anyone interfering. I like him, but that doesn't mean we're meant to be together. It just means he owns a bookstore, and I wanted his goods. As long as you mean the goods in his store and not the goods in his pants. Sammy rolled her eyes. Go away. Hey, I'm your favorite sister. Tabby protested. Right now, you're my least favorite sister. Only sister. Sammy shook her head. I have new books to read. Go home and play with Arch, and I'll read my books. I'm going. I'm going. Tabby carefully got down off the table and hugged Sammy. Love you. Love you back. Sammy watched her sister go with a smile, and then she went into the little home attached to the back of the clinic she shared with her sister. She opened the crock pot and served herself some of the chili she'd put in there before work that morning and sat down at the table, book in hand. She was going to read and read and read, and nothing made her happier. Asterisk. Sammy was sitting in her regular booth at Bob's Burger Barn the next day at lunch, a book in hand. She was waiting on her taco burger as she read and not paying attention to anything around her. Is this seat taken? Asked a masculine voice, and she looked up. Hey, Barry. Have a seat. She was surprised to see him there, but she wasn't sure why. He did work at the next building over, after all. Do you eat lunch here every day? He asked. I do. I love the taco burger. I remember when he was working on it, and as soon as it came onto the menu, I got it. I've had it just about every day since, because it's amazing. I haven't tried it yet. Maybe I'll get that today. I always get the taco burger and a side of fried cheese curds. Then I feel sick as I go back to work, but it's so amazing, I just can't seem to stop. Sammy knew she shouldn't divulge secrets about her terrible eating habits with a man she wanted to date, but she couldn't seem to help herself. He looked at the book in her hand. Did you get that from me yesterday? She nodded excitedly. Yup. One of my favorite authors, and I hadn't read this one yet. I only buy hers in paperback because I want to be able to keep them. That makes sense. He tilted his head to one side. What is it you like about that author so much? I love the marriage of convenience stories. Barry shook his head. You've lost me. What's marriage of convenience? It's when two people marry for reasons other than love. Like if they marry because his wife died and left him with triplets. Or if he needs to be married for an inheritance, so he marries her, and they eventually fall in love. Those are my favorites. Really? I'm not sure I understand the appeal of that, but I'm not a woman, so that may be why. What did you do before opening a bookstore? And how did you end up in Culpepper? I've been through the area for rodeos many times. I used to ride broncs. When I was thrown and broke my leg in a way that will never totally heal, I decided it was time to stop riding, and I figured I'd open a bookstore. The other guys on the rodeo circuit used to make fun of me for reading so much, but I've always loved books. He shrugged. I miss the rodeo at times, but I like the idea of building a business of my own and not destroying my body in the process. Have you ever thought about writing, or do you just read? He seemed embarrassed for a moment, and Bob came by then to slide Sammy's food in front of her. There you go. He looked at Barry. What are you hungry for? Barry looked at Sammy's taco burger. I think I want to try the taco burger and a side of fried cheese curds. You're corrupting the man, Bob said to Sammy before wandering off. Well? Have you thought about writing? She asked again. He nodded. I'm actually working on writing a book between customers and shelving books and other store duties. It's a sci-fi story set in 2346, and I'm really excited about it. You'll have to let me read what you've written so far. Is there romance in it? He shook his head. Not in sci-fi. There's no point in writing a book with no romance. Trust me, you need romance. Add some. He just laughed, snagging one of her cheese curds. We'll see. Chapter 2. Getting ready for her date that night was a struggle for Sammy. She had no idea what they were doing, so knowing what to wear was virtually impossible. She decided that dressing in Western wear might be the best bet, given his history. She put on a pair of jeans, a button-up shirt, and a pair of green cowgirl boots. She decided not to go nuts and top it off with her favorite hat, because that would seem like overkill. When Barry came to the door, exactly at 7, she smiled to see he'd worn very close to the same thing. Hi. Barry grinned. Hi. You ready? Weather doesn't look great, but I think we're all right if we stick around Culpepper. Truthfully, only an idiot would get out in the weather they were having if they didn't need to, but for her, he'd be an idiot all day. Sounds good to me. What are we eating? He'd treated her to Bob's for lunch, so she wasn't sure what else he had up his sleeve. I was thinking we could stop at the diner for supper and then go to the bar for some dancing. Sammy bit her lip. She wasn't a drinker and preferred not to be in the company of someone who drank, especially if they were driving. I'm not really fond of alcohol. She'd lost a friend to a drunk driving accident when she'd been in college for her RN, and she hated the idea of being around anyone drunk as a result. I don't drink at all. I saw too many accidents that were caused by alcohol when I was on the road. I just want to dance. But you won't drink? Sammy asked. She had to be certain. It was the line she'd drawn for herself, not drinking or dating anyone who drank, and she refused to lie to herself. I won't drink at all. Unless you consider a root beer a drink. I don't. She grinned at him, happy they were seeing eye to eye on the subject. She hopped into the passenger side of his truck and quickly buckled up. I like your truck. Thanks. You like the snowplow on the front? I put that there just for our date. He knew there was a good chance they'd be stuck somewhere, and if he could alleviate the hassle of it with a plow on the front, he sure would. Oh, it's lovely. Best thing I've ever seen. And it was, because it meant they could get home, no matter how much snow fell that night. He grinned. I don't like to have to close my shop on snow days, so I made it so I can handle whatever snow falls all on my own. Very smart of you. I think so. He grinned at her, noting she was watching him drive. So what kind of schooling is involved in becoming a midwife? Well, I'm a CNM, certified nurse midwife. I did 4 years of college to become an RN, and then I did 1 year of nursing. Then another 3 years to get my master's in nursing with a concentration in midwifery. My sister and I really had the same goal, but we went about it in different ways. But we rely on each other when we need to. So if you're delivering a baby and there's a complication, she helps out? Yes. She's done C-sections on my patients when medically necessary, and I assist in almost all her births. We work together a lot more than you'd think. Most midwives don't have a doctor they work so closely with, but this works well for both of us. Barry had never thought about a practice like that. So if you get pregnant, does your sister deliver the baby? Sammy laughed softly. Well, since Tabby is due in a few weeks, and I'm delivering her baby, I would think so. Really? He shook his head. Interesting. He parked the car in the parking lot of the diner, looking over at her. I'm glad you agreed to come out with me tonight. Me too. She grinned at him. And not just because you love books like I do. Well, the book thing has to be the draw. I should have realized I should have a bigger romance section when I designed the layout for the store. The more romance, the more women, I would think. That makes a lot of sense, she said with a grin. Make it happen. He laughed softly. I'll need your help to design it. Happy to do it. And we'll design it right. There'll be a section for time travel romance. Another for marriage of convenience. Yet another for billionaire. And another for secret babies. Another for shifters. You'll have the best romance bookstore in the whole country. Is there still room for science fiction? I do love my science fiction. She sighed. I guess we can leave a tiny corner of the store open for sci-fi. He shook his head, opening his door and getting out. He hurried around to help her down. Careful. It's slick over here. You must have seen me try to walk on ice before. I will do my best not to break myself on our date. That's a relief, he said with a grin. They stomped the snow from their feet as they entered the diner. Two of you? The hostess asked. How are you doing, Maggie? Sammy asked after Barry nodded in answer to Maggie's question. Tired. I hope you didn't get your feelings hurt when I went to Tabby this time. After that emergency C-section last time, I just felt better starting out with an OB-GYN. Maggie looked at her as if she was nervous of her answer. Don't even worry about it, Maggie. I'll still be there for the birth, and you'll be in great hands with my sister. All is good as long as your baby is born healthy. Maggie smiled. I'm so glad you see it that way. John and I debated, but in the end, we want to have Tabby ready to take the baby. I understand that perfectly. My sister is always on call when I deliver for a reason. Sammy slid into the booth. Drinks? Maggie asked, looking back and forth between them. I want a Sprite. Root beer, Barry said. As she walked away, Barry smiled. You really did handle that well. I hope you know that. I did my best. I feel like having the best medical help you can when you deliver a baby is the right thing to do. I'm not going to ask a lot of questions about your work, because I really don't want to know a lot about the birthing process. I've helped cows and horses, but never humans. Where did you grow up? She asked. He shrugged. Kind of all over. My parents divorced when I was young, and my mother remarried. A lot. It was kind of like the show Gypsy. There's a song in there where they talk about their mother getting married. And married. And married. That's what my life was like. Mom would remarry, and then I'd go to another state. I spent my high school years in western Wyoming, and I learned my love of bull riding there. But I've lived in New York City, Texas, California, and Idaho. Pretty much all over. Are you an only child? She asked. He shook his head. No, I have a half-brother who is 5 years younger than me. I keep trying to get him to move here and help me run my bookstore. What does he do? He's a bull rider. He went on the rodeo circuit just like I did. I hope he retires soon. It was strange how much he worried about his brother when he was just doing the same thing he'd done. What's his name? Bart. My mother thought she was cute, naming us Barry and Bart. She's a mess. Where is she now? He shrugged. California again was the last I heard. The longest she ever stayed anywhere was while I was in high school. I don't miss that lifestyle. But it sounds like you kind of went into it when you were on the circuit. Am I misunderstanding? He looked shocked for a moment. I never really thought of that. He'd chosen as his first job something that would make him continue the way of life he'd hated growing up. People tend to return to the things that make them most comfortable. You are used to never knowing anyone for long and moving on. So that's what you do. She hoped he was there to stay. I thought you were a midwife, not a psychologist. She grinned. There was a waiting list for nursing school, so I have a dual degree in nursing and psychology. Fun, huh? Barry made a face. I'm not so sure about that one. She giggled. Well, I like it. So tell me about the area. What do you like to do in the winter? Sammy thought about it for a moment. I love snowmobiling. I would spend every waking hour doing that. Well, if I could divide snowmobiling and reading by the fire, that would be good. I like to sled as well. I just kind of like winter, I guess. Except shoveling snow. We have a four-wheeler with a plow on the front for the clinic parking lot, but it's not as much fun as it sounds. He laughed. I have been plowing my parking lot with my truck. Hopefully people will start coming in. Business is slow, she asked, concerned. A little. I've been told the spring and summer will bring in more people and they will buy books. We'll see. I won't give up, and going between customers gives me time to write. That's right. Tell me about your book. He shook his head. I'm superstitious. I don't want to talk about it until it's completely done and edited. Then I'll probably be begging you to read it and give me your opinion on it. I'm happy to do that. I love the idea of having a writer for a friend. She'd started to say boyfriend but thought better of it. They'd only known one another for a day and a half. Calling him a boyfriend this soon just might mess with his head. Well, you've got one. He grinned. So you seem to always be around babies with your career. Do you want kids? She smiled tentatively. I want dozens of kids. Seriously. I'd have as many as I could. Of course, I'm 33, and I need to start soon if I'm going to have any of them at all. He frowned at that. You need to find a man to marry quick then. Maybe I should hide under the table. What he felt like doing was standing and saying he volunteered as tribute. He wasn't sure how that would make her react, though. She laughed. I promise, I'm not going to dig my claws into you and never let you go. I need to get to know a man before I see him as the father of my future imaginary children. That's probably good news for me. He leaned back as Maggie brought their drinks. Do you know what you want? Maggie laughed. Even I know what she wants. This one is a creature of habit. She's having the Salisbury steak with mashed potatoes and brown gravy. She turned her attention to Barry. You? He shrugged. That sounds good to me. You don't have to get it just because I am. Take some time to look if you want. Sammy felt like she'd forced him to eat what she liked for lunch. She didn't want to do the same thing for supper. No, it really sounds good. Maggie nodded and hurried away. So. I got you a Valentine's gift, he said. How did you do that so quick? I didn't get anything for you. Sammy suddenly felt like a heel. Barry grinned. Then I get to kiss you goodnight for my gift. She frowned. It sounds like you've thought this out a little too far. Maybe I have. He reached over and covered her hand with his. I think I already like you a lot. I want to know if there's a chance it'll go anywhere, and a goodnight kiss will tell me. If they had half the chemistry between them he thought they did, then it was going to be fabulous. I guess it will. Sammy was only worried about kissing him because she was so attracted to him. She was afraid she'd melt into a puddle in his arms, and she had to work the next day. He pulled something from under the table, and she wondered how he'd gotten it there. She hadn't seen him carry anything in from the car. What is it? She asked, frowning. It's your gift. It was wrapped nicely with heart-covered wrapping paper. Did you wrap this yourself? She asked. She'd always been terrible at wrapping gifts, and admired anyone who could do a good job. No way. I had the company I ordered it from wrap it. How did you get it so quick? Barry frowned at her. Some secrets shall never be revealed. Sammy shook her head, loving his light-hearted sense of humor. The man was growing on her, like a fungus. She carefully opened the gift and pulled out a box of chocolate. Turning over the heart-shaped box, she found the name of the company. Frank's Fudge? You got me Frank's Fudge? And this is why I knew before I ever saw you that I'd fall in love with you. Frank's Fudge is my favorite ever. Barry grinned. I hoped you'd like it. Did you get the Erin? Those are my absolute favorites. Milk chocolate, caramel, and sea salt. I can already taste them. He nodded. I did get the Erin. You seem to know Frank's Fudge well. What you probably don't know yet, because you're new to town, is that Megan, Bob's wife from Bob's Burger Barn, has a sister who married Al Frank, the owner of Frank's Fudge. Those of us who didn't know the company before that sure know it now. We want to support Al and Erin, because we love Megan and Bob. You're right. I didn't know that. But I love that you do. Barry would be constantly surprised by the people of this town and how much they knew about one another. Sammy hugged the heart-shaped box to her chest and then stuffed it in her purse. You're definitely getting that goodnight kiss. Barry grinned. Only if you want to kiss me. I was kidding about that being your return gift for me. I'm glad you like the chocolate, though. I met Al a few years back, and once I'd tried his fudge, I knew I was going to eat only his chocolate forever. You have awfully good taste in chocolate, then. Maggie brought their food then, sliding a plate in front of each of them. If you need anything else, just yell. Thanks, Maggie. Go put your feet up. Don't think I won't. Maggie hurried off toward the kitchen, making Sammy glad the diner wasn't very busy. I guess the weather kept most people at home tonight. Good. We have the whole place to ourselves. Maybe the bar will be the same. Sammy looked at her supper and grinned. It was definitely her favorite thing the diner served. Have you met the guy who runs it? Austin? Yeah, Austin is amazing. I love his wife, Dallas. I delivered her baby, come to think of it. Wait. Austin married Dallas? 2 Texas cities? Sammy nodded emphatically. Yup. Craziness, huh? They were meant for each other before either of them even knew it. That's really cool, actually. He took a bite of his supper and smiled. You choose food well. The next time we go out, you're going to just have to tell me what I'm getting. Oh? Are we going out again? Well, unless you're a terrible kisser. If you slobber all over me, then I'll have to dump you. Barry stabbed his fork into his Salisbury steak to punctuate what he was saying. She laughed. I see where your priorities are. Do you have plans for the weekend? He asked. Really, he wanted to know if she was seeing anyone else, but he didn't want to come right out and ask. Yeah, I'm throwing a baby shower for my sister. Should be fun. All the men are going to the bar and having a dart tournament. You should join them. When is this shower? He asked, hating that she was going to be too busy to see him. We're doing it Saturday evening. From 6 to 8. Sammy shrugged. It seemed like it was the best time for everyone. All right. So you're free Friday night and Sunday night? She nodded. Mostly. I do church on Sunday morning. Have you been to the church in town? Brother Anthony's weddings are phenomenal. And I have to decorate for the shower tomorrow night. We're doing it at the clinic, and it's going to be a lot of work. She wished she'd had the foresight to ask some of the women in town to help decorate, but she was on her own. How can a wedding be phenomenal? They're all the same. Not Brother Anthony's. Seriously, if you get invited to a wedding he's presiding over, you have to go. It's crazy how good they are. I'll keep that in mind. I don't seem to be at the top of anyone's wedding invitation list yet, but give me time. They kept talking while they ate, discussing all the different people in town. Have you been to the bakery yet? Sammy asked. I like to go every morning for the collages. I either run over there in the mornings to get them, or I have to do 30 minutes on my treadmill every night. The food is fattening, but so good. I haven't. Is it here in town? He was a fan of collages because of the time he'd spent in Texas. Actually, no. It's off the Culpepper Ranch. That's why I haven't seen it. I've met the 3 Culpepper brothers, though. There are 4. Sammy said. Carlin, Cooper, Colby, and Chris. Oh, I think I've met Carlin, Cooper, and Colby. Chris is married to Chastity. Why are there so many names like that around town? I mean the virtuous names. I've never seen anything like it. Wow. You don't know much about the town, do you? He shook his head. Not really. What am I missing? He knew she would know everything there was to know, but he didn't want to seem too terribly nosy. Now he had to know. Sammy blinked. A lot. Let me tell you about Culpepper, Wyoming. About 4 years ago, there was this photo shoot on a ranch near town. It was for male underwear models. When word got out that there were hunky male models on a ranch near town, all the women in town rushed out there on different pretenses. Even a lot of the married women, if I'm totally honest with you. And then there was a blizzard. So many women were trapped there with the models. So then there were pregnancies and weddings following it. There weren't many women left in Culpepper after that. He frowned at her. You're kidding, right? Not at all. Well then, the Culpeppers' grandfather died. And he stipulated in the will that all 4 brothers had to be married within a month of the reading of the will, and at least one brother had to have a baby on the way by the end of the year. Or their ridiculous cousin who cared nothing about ranches would inherit. With no women left? Well, you were here. Yeah, but no one was interested in me. Everyone knew Tabby would end up with Arch, so she was kind of forbidden, and we were always linked as sisters, so I was ignored, as if I was supposed to be with Arch, too. It was weird. So where did they get wives from? Well, they contacted a matchmaker, who sent out quadruplets, and let each of the brothers choose. Those quadruplets were Hope, Faith, Joy, and Chastity Quinlan. Each of them married one of the Culpepper brothers. Then their younger sisters, twins of course, joined them. Grace and Honor came with their cousins, Patience and Felicity. So we had 8 Quinlans with names like that. See? I see it's all confusing and giving me a headache. She laughed. We all feel that way at times. Chapter 3. After supper, Barry and Sammy went straight to Austin's bar, the Culpepper Watering Hole. When they arrived, they realized the weather really had kept most people away. There was only one couple on the dance floor, and they were Austin and his wife, Dallas. There was a live band in the corner, and the bands usually brought in a crowd. Austin smiled at them, kissing his wife's cheek and heading toward them. Do you need anything from the bar? Soft drinks maybe? Barry looked at Sammy. Thirsty? No, but I will be after a couple of dances. Sprite? You want me to make it a Shirley Temple? That's what Dallas and I drink. Sammy grinned. Sounds wonderful. Barry walked off to the bar with Austin. Sammy headed straight for Dallas. Who's babysitting tonight? Dallas grinned. The best thing about teaching high school is that I always know who isn't dating and is available to babysit for date night. Tonight, it's Alicia Waters. She broke up with her boyfriend last week, and she's my favorite babysitter anyway. She's wonderful. I've heard about her babysitting. She's supposed to be great with kids. Oh, she is. I hate that she's sad after breaking up with scumbag Michael, but he was using her to do his homework anyway. I know the type. Dallas shook her head. She's better off making a few bucks and playing with a baby. Very true. Sammy smiled. You guys planning another? I wouldn't mind delivering. Dallas laughed. You know we'll come straight to you if we end up pregnant again. And yes, we'd like one more. We were both lonely onlys, and we'd like to spare our child that. I can understand that completely. Austin and Barry returned with the drinks, and they put them on an empty table. Barry took Sammy's hand in his. May I have this dance? Sammy laughed. For tonight, you get every dance. I'd prefer forever, but I'll take tonight. Barry winked at her. She shook her head, moving into his arms, to the slow song the band was playing. I hope they do slow songs all night. She loved to dance, but she didn't feel comfortable with fast songs. Slow songs were what made her happy. Austin told me he requested only slow songs. He prefers to dance to the slow ones, too, and he's enjoying a nice night with his wife. His bartender called in afraid to drive through the snow, but with it only being them and us, he's fine with it. Sammy was surprised at just how good his arms felt around her. She rested her head on his shoulder, letting herself think of possibilities with this man for the first time since she'd met him. Until that moment, he was just someone to have fun with for one night. Now, well, maybe there could be a future between them. Barry's hand stroked her back gently as they slow danced together. He couldn't believe just how good she felt in his arms. When he'd first seen her and she'd claimed to be in love with him, he had been more attracted than he'd ever been, but he'd expected the feelings to subside when he touched her. Nothing could feel that strong, could it? Apparently, he was wrong. They danced 4 dances together before the band announced they were taking a break until the next set. While they took their break, the 4 of them sat at a table together. Dallas looked at Barry. I don't think I know you. Do you live in Culpepper? She took a sip of her Shirley Temple. I opened the new bookstore, Barry's Books. It's next to Bob's Burger Barn. Dallas smiled. I love books. I hope you have a good romance section. Barry looked back and forth between Dallas and Sammy. I hope you two are best friends, because you've said the exact same thing to me. Sammy smiled. We're friendly. I delivered their baby 18 months ago, and she's adorable. I didn't realize you were a romance novel fan, Dallas said, looking at Sammy. Maybe I do need a new best friend. Austin shrugged. I'll stop being your best friend if I can stay your husband. Either way is good for me. Barry laughed. I guess being best friends with your spouse would be the best possible scenario. It is. Dallas looked over at Austin with a soft smile on her face. But he's been my best friend since 3rd grade. Austin took her hand in his. Back then I told everyone who would listen that I was going to run away with her and marry her, and we were going to live under the monkey bars, and I would fish to feed us. He shook his head. I'd still live under monkey bars with you any day. Dallas laughed. If only you'd been able to convince me of how you felt sooner. It wasn't my fault you were stubborn and unbending. Sammy grinned at the play between the married couple. I always wondered why you two married so quickly as soon as you moved back to town. I moved away the day of graduation. It took my father's imminent death to bring me back, and it didn't take long for this guy to swoop me off my feet. So he's a good swooper? Sammy asked. The best. Barry frowned. Maybe I could take lessons on swooping from you, Austin. Have you ever given them formally? I think your heart just has to be 100% committed to the swoopy for it to work. Dallas sighed. If I were an English teacher, I'd be very offended right now. It's a good thing you teach math, dear, Austin said with a grin. Sammy sat back, watching the other 3 talk for a few minutes. She had never really thought of Dallas in any way other than as a patient, so she was surprised how much she was liking her in this social situation. We need to have lunch together sometime soon, Sammy said to Dallas. I'd love that. I don't have a lot of female friends in town. I've been a little too obsessed with a certain man to make friends here since I returned. I'm friends with the wives of his two closest friends, but no one else really. I can understand that completely. I've had nothing but time, so I have a few female friends. Well, and your job puts you in touch with all of the women in town. That's quite different than talking to every teenager in high school. Dallas shook her head. Sometimes I'll do anything for a little adult conversation. Next time you feel that way, just give me a call. We'll leave Austin with the baby and run away and do something fun. Like go to the bookstore and try to nag Barry into expanding his romance section. Dallas laughed. We'll have to dig through each other's romance collections as well. I'm sure I'll find something I want to read in yours, and you should find something in mine. Remember, there's a bookseller at the table. None of this book swapping now, Barry said with a laugh. The band started playing again, and all of them gravitated back to the dance floor. Sammy was happy. She'd not only started dating a man she was very attracted to, but she had made a new friend of an old acquaintance. Why had they never realized how much they had in common before? It was a little after 10 when Sammy finally said, I need to get home. I have to be ready for any deliveries that may come, and I need to plan to have the clinic open tomorrow. Everyone knows I live there, so snow or no snow, I'm stuck. Barry nodded. I can take you home. He couldn't believe how much he wanted the night to go on and on. Usually when he dated someone new, they were clinging to him and not the other way around. Sammy hugged Dallas before leaving. Remember to call me when you need adult conversation. I would love to hang out with you sometime soon. Dallas smiled. I'll do that. The whole drive home, Sammy had a slight smile on her face. The snow was coming down hard and heavy, and there were a couple of places when she was sure Barry's four-wheel drive wouldn't be enough to get them through the snow. She was worried he really would have to use the snow plow on the front of his truck. When they got to her home, he got out of the truck and walked around to help her down. I had a wonderful time, he said. I hope you'll go out with me again soon. Sammy nodded. I really enjoyed myself. You just let me know when, and I'll be there. He had his hand on her arm, and she could feel it burning through her thick, winter coat. When they got to her door, he turned to her. About that kiss. Is it as romantic if you talk about it first? She asked, frowning at him. I'm not sure. I guess I should change the subject. How do you think the Cubs will do this year? Cubs? She asked. You mean the baseball team? While she still had a look of confusion on her face, he leaned down and brushed his lips against hers. Taken by surprise, Sammy stood there for a moment before wrapping her arms around Barry's neck and holding on for dear life. His mouth moved against hers in a way that had her moving closer to him. Whoever had taught him to kiss had done an excellent job. When he finally lifted his head, her lips were swollen from his kiss, and her eyes were half closed. That was amazing, she said softly. He smiled. I'll call you. Maybe we can go out tomorrow night. I need to get the last details put together for my sister's shower. We're doing it here in the clinic, so I'll be decorating all night. Maybe I'll come help then. I can bring a pizza. She smiled. That would make me happier than I could express. She looked up at him, trying to memorize how his face looked, with the snow clinging to his eyelashes. I sometimes have to cancel at the last minute for deliveries. I hope you'll keep that in mind. I understand. He leaned down and kissed her once more, quickly. Hurry in before you freeze to death. You would never let me freeze in your arms. I think I like you. He turned and rushed back to his truck, while she opened the door and went inside. She changed into her pajamas, went into her bedroom, and realized she heard a snow plow. Looking out the window, she saw Barry was plowing her parking lot for her. It would be covered again by morning, but he'd made her job so much easier. The man was something special. There was no doubt about it. Asterisk. Sammy called in a to-go order at Bob's the following day, so she would have time to run to the bakery and pick up the cake for the baby shower. When she walked into the bakery and saw the cake for the first time, she put her hand over her mouth in surprise. "You outdid yourself this time, Grace. It's beautiful." The cake depicted Tabby, stethoscope around her neck, and a zippered tummy, with a baby popping out. Tabby actually looked like herself, and Sammy couldn't be more excited. Grace grinned at her. She was the younger sister of the Quinlan Quads and half of the Quinlan twins. "I'm so glad you like it. I used a picture of Tabby that I had, and I made it look as much like her as I could. It was so fun, and a challenge for me. I'm glad you had fun with it. It looks amazing." Sammy paid for the cake. "You're going to be there tomorrow, right?" Grace nodded. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." Patience nodded from behind Grace. "I'll be there, too. So will Felicity." "Where is Felicity today?" Sammy asked. The girl rarely missed work. She and Alan are looking at houses with Megan. They decided to get something bigger, since she's having twins this time. "It's hard to believe how big our family has gotten since we moved here," Patience said. "Well, good for them. Thanks so much for your help." Sammy headed for the door, nodding to the man opening it. She didn't recognize him, but that wasn't surprising. All of the new commerce in Culpepper had brought in a lot of strangers from surrounding areas. "Thank you," she said as she hurried to her car with the cake. As soon as she got home, she dug into her taco burger and fried cheese curds, smiling contentedly. She wasn't sure what it was about the combination, but they sure made her happy. As she was eating, she got a call, swallowed quickly, and answered. "Hello? How's my favorite single daughter?" "Hey, Mom. What's up?" "Well, I think I told you I'm dating a great guy." Sammy frowned. Something was up, and she had a feeling she didn't want to be any part of it. "Sure. He's a plumber there in Cheyenne." "Right. Well, he has a son around your age." "Mom, I'm dating someone." It felt so good to be able to tell her mother that. Sure, they weren't serious and had only been on one date so far, but at least she wouldn't have to deal with her mother's matchmaking. "But I'm sure you'd like Scott." "Mom, I'm finally taking the bull by the horns and writing my own story. No more blind dates. Ever. Barry and I went out last night, and he's coming over again tonight to help me decorate for Tabby's shower. Are you coming, by the way? She would love to have you here." "I'm planning to be there." "Are you sure I can't bring Scott for you to meet?" Sammy shook her head. She loved her mother, but at times, she was altogether too pushy. "I'm sure. Even if I wasn't dating someone, I wouldn't have time tomorrow anyway. I'm playing hostess for Tabby's shower. Remember?" At first, she had hoped her mother would help her throw it, but it was clear that wasn't happening. "I remember." "All right, I'll leave him at home. See you tomorrow evening." "Bye, Mom. Love you." "Love you, too." After ending the call, Sammy sighed. What was wrong with her? She hoped the idea of her meeting this Scott was out of her mother's head now. She didn't need to worry about being set up with a stranger. She was busy enough as it was. She quickly finished her lunch and washed her hands. She had a patient in 15 minutes. Thankfully, the plows had made short work of the roads, and everything had been business as usual all day. Asterisk. True to his word, Barry was there just before 6 that evening. He held a pizza box in his hands. Sammy opened the door wide before he had a chance to knock. "Hey you." She took the box from him and carried it over to the counter. Barry looked around the space of her home. This is nice. She smiled. It's a lot nicer now that it's just me. It was a little cramped when I shared it with Tabby. You two are close, I take it? Sammy nodded. Yeah, she's a year older than me, and we have always been super close. We love that we have been able to work so closely together. She took down plates and forks, setting some napkins on the counter. I only have Sprite in my fridge. You okay with that? Or water, of course. Milk. Sprite's fine. I like to have pop with my pizza. He wouldn't have gone to all the fuss of getting plates and forks for pizza, but he didn't complain, simply putting a couple of pieces on the plate she handed him. I'm starving. I wasn't sure what you liked on your pizza, so I told the little pizza place in town to just give me whatever you usually get. She laughed, looking at the pizza. I wondered how you knew. Small towns. The pizza was her exact order. Canadian bacon, sausage, and mushrooms. Yup. It wouldn't have worked anywhere bigger than this. He took his plate to the table and sat down, waiting for her to come with her own pizza. She set her plate down and got them each a bottle of Sprite from the fridge. I'm so hungry. I'm glad you got here when you did. She took a bite of the pizza and wiped her mouth with her napkin. She loved pizza, but it was tough on a date because it was so messy. I'm pretty darn hungry, too. We'll eat this and then work on decorations. Do you have any idea what you have in mind? Yeah, I have balloons, a helium tank, and streamers. It's going to be all decked out in blue because she's having a boy. I want to make her favorite office chair her throne and have streamers floating to the floor. Should be fun. Sounds good to me. As soon as we're done eating, we're going to conquer it. Chapter 4. Working with Barry that night, Sammy realized just how well they fit together. It took them 2 hours to completely transform the waiting room of the clinic into a balloon and streamer-ridden party room. Once the cake is in place, it's going to look perfect, Sammy said, standing back and looking at everything. You think? He asked. She nodded. Yeah, it looks just like a baby shower should. She plopped down in one of the chairs in the waiting room. What do you think? He shrugged. I don't think I'm allowed to have an opinion. I've never been to a baby shower. Sammy laughed. I go to almost every baby shower in town because they're all either for my patients or Tabby's, and a lot of times, they're both. Well, if you think it looks good, it must be perfect, then. Yes, definitely perfect. She sighed happily. Our mom is coming here from Cheyenne tomorrow. Not sure if I'm ready. Why's that? He asked, frowning at her. Well, she called today during my lunch and wanted to bring with her the son of the man she's dating. She is always trying to set me up with someone. I told her I was dating and made it seem a whole lot more serious than it really is, just to get her out of my hair. How serious did you make it seem? Barry asked. He would happily make anything she'd said a reality. More serious than one date, for sure. I didn't really give any details, though, so she can infer what she will. Barry turned to her. I'm pretty serious. I mean, I know we've only gone out once, but I'm developing feelings for you pretty darn quick. Sammy felt her heart beat faster at his words. Really? He nodded. Really? I've never dated anyone like you. He gave a short laugh. I don't know if I've ever dated much, to be honest. Most of the girls I went out with were rodeo groupies, if that makes sense. They'd follow the rodeo from one place to the next, hoping to get them a roper. Why? Sammy asked. She'd never understood that kind of lifestyle. Because we're all sexy and 7 feet tall, of course, he replied. How did I not know that? She asked. No clue. She grinned, walking back toward her place from the clinic. I'm going to have another piece of pizza. My way of celebrating the decorating being done. Are you just serving cake tomorrow? Are there other goodies we can get into? She laughed. Well, I'm doing punch and chips and dip and a few other snacky things. People will eat before they come, though, so no meals or anything. Do you cook? He asked. Are you asking me to cook for you at 10 at night? 'Cause I'm not doing it. He laughed. No, I was just curious if you cook at all. I wouldn't ask anyone to cook for me at this hour of the night. Not even my mother. Of course, she never could cook anyway, so I can't imagine asking her to cook anything. Huh. My mom cooked a lot, but then the parents divorced. I think she still cooks. I haven't stayed with her in a long time. Well, you do kind of have your own life to live. I do. I'm so glad you can see that. She put the pizza back onto the counter from the fridge. Want it cold, or should I heat it in the oven? Why not nuke it? Dries it out too much. If I'm going to reheat pizza, I'll always do it in the oven. He shrugged, bowing to her superior experience in pizza reheating. Let's eat it cold. He grabbed a piece and put it on the plate she had set out. Why did women feel the need to eat pizza on a plate? You never did answer my question. Do you cook? She nodded. I'm actually a really good cook. I prefer not to cook, but I can do it and do it well when the situation calls for it. He eyed her suspiciously. So you don't cook daily? She shrugged. I heat stuff up daily. I tend to make a big pot of soup on Sundays and munch on it all week. If I crave something, I'll make it during the week, but for the most part, I only really cook on the weekends. I eat out for lunch every day because Bob cooks for me. You seem to think a lot of Bob. Do I have reason to be jealous there? She laughed. Megan would kill me if I tried something with Bob. She's tiny but fierce. He grinned. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting Megan yet. She's a real estate agent here in town, and she and Bob are a perfect fit. She's pregnant with their second child, and I'm going to deliver it. I delivered their first, too. Sounds like Megan is someone I want to meet, then. I think a lot of Bob. He sent lots of customers my way. Sounds like Bob. He's a good guy, even though he tries to come across as grumpy all the time. I think he has in his head that good chefs have to be grumpy. They don't? She shook her head. They really don't. Not at all. She shrugged, thinking about what she needed to do next. I'm making 4 different kinds of dips for the party tomorrow. Some are cooked, and some aren't. And I'm making cookies, though they won't hold a candle to Patience Jenner's cookies. She's amazing. I've heard interesting things about Patience, I'm afraid. She sounds like a real character. Oh, she is. Don't doubt that, but she's fun and hilarious. I really like her. Sammy shrugged. And she's a good customer. I've delivered 1 baby, and now she's pregnant with twins. He laughed. I guess you're not a fan of birth control. Well, on some levels I am, she grinned at him. So how's the book business? Are you doing well? He shrugged. I've only been open for a week, but I was hoping for better from my first week. I sure hope everyone is right and sales will pick up during the summer months. I'm not sure I'll be able to keep it going otherwise. She frowned. Well, I think we desperately need a bookstore here in town, so I will do my best to support you. If you want to print up flyers or coupons of some sort, I'll put them in the waiting room. That's not a bad idea. I wonder if Bob would do the same. I think half the businesses in town would. Want me to talk to Grace about it tomorrow? She and her cousins own the bakery, and they'll be here. That would be wonderful, if you don't mind. I hope you know I'm not dating you for your local business connections. She laughed. If you were, you'd be silly. Everyone in town has the same connections. I guess that's true. He finished his pizza and wiped his mouth. So tomorrow night you have the shower, right? I do. My whole day will be wrapped up in shower activities, like cooking and getting the game set up. What about Sunday? She shrugged. I usually do my laundry after church, but I could probably work that fascinating activity into my cooking day tomorrow. She shook her head. This was a bad week for us to start dating with Tabby's shower tomorrow. Well, how would you feel about going sledding after church? Or snowmobiling? Or we could hang out in my bookstore. Or I could take you to a movie? I guess I'm trying to say that I want to spend the day with you. I'd like to spend the day with you, too. Sammy shrugged. Any of those activities would be good, as far as I'm concerned. I think it's supposed to be a little cold for outdoor stuff. Why don't we see a movie? What's playing? She asked. I really don't care, Barry said with a grin. I just want to spend the day with you. She laughed. Well, then let's go see whatever's playing and have a good day. She loved that he didn't care what movie it was. It made her feel like she was the main attraction, and every woman should feel that way. All right. I haven't been to church yet since moving here, and I think I'm going to go on Sunday. May I sit with you? She blinked a couple of times. You know that in a town like this, sitting with me at church is like announcing we're not only dating, we're engaged, I'm pregnant, and the marriage will be taking place within the next few days, right? He laughed. I don't care. Do you? Well, I don't necessarily want to be pregnant with your child after only knowing you a couple of days. Let me think on it. He shook his head. I think we should go sit together on the couch. Why? Because you want me closer so you can grope me? I'm not sure my daddy would approve. He grinned. Your daddy isn't here, little girl. She threw back her head and laughed. You sounded so lecherous for a moment there. He stood up and took her hand, pulling her with him to her couch. There, now we're right where we should be. His arm went around her shoulders, and he just held her close. She had a fire going in the fireplace in front of them. I like your little place. Me too. Tabby and I designed it together when we built the clinic. It feels like home for sure. I do like the extra space now that she's gone. Isn't she married to one of the O'Donnells? She is. To Arch. He's the architect of the family. What does Arch stand for? She giggled. Archibald. Tabby likes to torment him with his full name on occasion. It makes her happy. He shook his head. Well, you can never torment me with my full name, all right? What's your full name? She turned toward him, only then realizing just how close they were sitting. Bartholomew. And that will not be repeated. You hear me? She giggled. I hear you. I really do. I like it, though. And I'm really Samantha. My parents were really into the old TV show Bewitched, so they named my sister and me Samantha and Tabitha. I think it's silly, but no one really makes the connection. Samantha. That sounds so much more girly than Sammy does. She grinned. I've always been Sammy. From the time I was able to walk, they'd already shortened it. And Tabby has always been Tabby. Well, I like Sammy. It suits you. He leaned down and quickly brushed his lips across hers. I like kissing Sammy, too. I approve of your choice of activities. She wiggled her eyebrows at him even as she leaned in for another longer, deeper kiss. She'd never imagined she'd be still single in her 30s, having make-out sessions on her couch. What was wrong with her? His hands gripped her waist and pulled her in closer to him. "You are absolutely intoxicating, Sammy Joe." She pulled away. "How did you know that my middle name is Joe?" He shrugged. "Just seems to fit you." Have you been checking up on me, Bartholomew James?" "My middle name is not James." "Then what is it?" "You already know my middle name is Joe." He wrinkled his nose. "I'd rather not say." "That bad, huh? Is it Melvin?" He laughed. "I'm not telling, so you can quit trying to force it out of me. Bartholomew is bad enough without the middle name added in." "Well, I hardly think you should be ashamed of your name. What happened to your father?" She knew the change in subject must seem abrupt, but he'd mentioned his mother after the divorce, but never his father. "My dad enlisted in the Marines after they divorced. He's gone on and had a new family entirely. New wife. 4 kids. I don't fit in with them. He always paid child support, but he never had any desire to see me." "That's sad. So you don't really have a relationship with him?" He shook his head. "It's really how my mom wanted it, to be honest. She thought whatever man she was married to at the time should be my father. Period." It was weird. That does sound weird. Did you make any kind of connection with any of the men? Just with Bart's dad. After him, I didn't even try. I was tired of having father figures in and out of my life. I can understand that. Sammy rested her head on his shoulder, wishing there was a way she could heal all of his childhood hurts. "Tell me about the rodeo." He shrugged. "I drove from one city to the next to be part of rodeos. I'd be in the heat of Texas in the summer, and the next week in a small town in Idaho. It was ridiculous. I loved it, though. I loved the cheer of the crowd. I loved the feeling of riding that bronco. I probably would still be doing it if I hadn't injured my leg so badly. It's full of ugly scars. Chicks dig scars. Didn't you ever see The Replacements?" He laughed. "I'll keep that in mind." "Are you a chick?" "I wouldn't say that. Other girls are. I don't think I want to be a chick, though." "Yeah, I always thought the term was derogatory." "It is. Sort of." She glanced at the clock, wondering how much longer he'd stay. She needed to be up early if she was going to do everything that needed to be done before the shower. "Are you ready for me to go?" he asked, noting that she looked at the clock. "I kind of want you to stay forever, but I have to be up early to get everything done tomorrow." She shook her head. "So what do I say? Please don't go, but let me sleep?" He laughed, kissing her softly. "I'll go, and I'll see you Sunday. I may even go to the bar tomorrow night and check out that darts tournament. Could be fun." She smiled. "Did I remember to thank you for plowing my parking lot? You made my day yesterday so much easier. I think I really do like you." He frowned. "You loved me on Wednesday. How did I get downgraded to really do like on Friday? I need to work on my moves." He got to his feet and pulled her to hers. "Should I start reading romance novels?" She laughed. "I loved the store before I loved you. See? Now that I'm getting to know you, I have to start from like. But I want you to go back to love. That was more fun for me." Sammy stood on tiptoe and kissed him goodnight after he'd put his coat on. "I'll see you at church on Sunday. Get ready for a wild ride." She grinned. "Well, unless Ben is preaching, and he might be. He almost seems sane when he gives the sermon." "Almost seems sane?" "I need to hear Brother Anthony, don't I?" "You sure do." She stood at the door and watched him rush out through the falling snow to his truck. After closing the door, she sighed. He was growing on her pretty darn fast. much faster than she'd thought he would. The man was a book lover, and he kissed like a dream. No wonder she was falling for him so fast. She took a quick shower and brushed her teeth, her mind on nothing but the man who had just left. He was pretty darn special to her, and she didn't know how to even express it. She'd known him for only 3 days, and already she was falling for him. What was the world coming to when boring Sammy Ross was falling in love with a man she'd just met? The news would be earth-shattering to anyone who knew her well. After finishing getting ready for bed, she climbed under the covers and reached for one of the books she'd purchased at his store. She was already making a list of the authors she wanted him to carry and how the whole romance section should be set up. With more romance novels, she was certain more women would shop there, and his store would be more successful. He just needed to listen to her. She read a chapter and then grabbed the pen and paper that were always on her nightstand, quickly making a list of everything she had to do the next day. She'd do laundry all day and make the dips. She had to make the punch. And she was getting tired just thinking about it all. Why had she volunteered to throw this baby shower? Someone else should have done it. She shut off the light, and her last thought before she fell asleep was about Barry. His brown eyes were sparkling as he kissed her before leaving. She hoped she would always remember him just that way. Her Barry. Whether she'd lost her mind or not, she planned to marry the man. She just hadn't told him yet. Across town, Barry climbed into his own bed, his mind entirely consumed by Sammy. She was something special, and he knew he was going to have to keep her. He wondered how long he needed to wait after meeting her before he could propose. Probably more than 3 days, but did it have to be more than a week? He hoped not. Maybe he'd call his mother for advice. Shaking his head, he shut off the light. Like his mother gave good advice about anything. Chapter 5. The clinic was hopping the following evening with all of the women the sisters had helped with their babies, and so many more. Tabby was overwhelmed by all of the attention and had tears in her eyes more than once. Sammy played hostess, hurrying back and forth between the clinic and the kitchen, refilling dips and talking to everyone. When the party was finally over, several of the women stayed behind to help clean up, including all 8 of the Quinlans, as well as Dallas. As all of the women worked, they laughed and talked about what it would be like for a midwife to deliver an obstetrician's baby. Tabby looked at Sammy. "It's going to go beautifully, and we do have an obstetrician standing by to do a C-section, just in case." Sammy shrugged. "I don't think it'll be necessary, but I do like to always have someone standing by. Usually, it's my sister, but we're going to do great." Dallas turned to Sammy. "Who's going to assist you, though? Doesn't Tabby usually assist you, and you usually assist her?" "Yeah, that's how it's done." "I don't know. Do you want to help?" Sammy grinned. She knew she could do it on her own, but it was fun watching other women get flustered. "I would love to," Dallas said, looking excited. Sammy was surprised, but when she looked at Tabby, her sister nodded. "You're in, apparently." "I love that sort of thing. I almost went into medicine, but teaching is what drew my heart." "Well, we'll be thrilled for the help," Tabby said. "She thinks she can do it alone, but I know we will need another pair of hands." Sammy rolled her eyes. She'd delivered babies alone before, and she would again. It would be nice not to have to, though. "Sounds good to me. I'll be glad to have an assistant." Patricia Ross walked over then, kissing each of her girls on the cheek. "I don't see a ring on your finger, Sammy. If you change your mind, let me know." "Thanks, Mom. I will." Patricia hurried out the door then, and Tabby turned on Sammy. "Ring on your finger? Mom's trying to set me up with her new boyfriend's son. I told her I'm seeing someone, and she still wanted to set me up. That's all." "You're seeing someone?" Tabby asked. Seriously seeing someone? Sammy shrugged. I'm not sure how serious we are yet, but I like him a lot. Dallas stepped closer. They were adorable together at the watering hole the other night. They danced and danced. Sounds like there might be something serious going on. Is it time for me to trick the two of you into getting married? Tabby asked. She'd held that same thread over Sammy for over 2 years. You're happy, sis. Let me find my own happiness. Sammy picked up an armful of baby gifts. Want me to take these out to your amazing new mommy van? Oh, hush. You know you have minivan envy. And yes, please. Everyone who was still there picked up an armload of gifts and took them to the car, each of them hugging Tabby. You're going to be an amazing mother, Felicity said. I'm so excited for you. Their bellies bumped as they hugged. Felicity's was bigger than Tabby's, though Tabby was much closer to her due date. Tabby looked at Felicity. I know Sammy is delivering the twins, but I'd like to do one more sonogram before my baby is born, if you don't mind. There are more likely to be complications with twins, and I want to make sure everything is all right. Felicity nodded. Sure. I love peeking at the little monsters. Sammy grinned. You should name them Bert and Ernie. Don't think I haven't thought about it. Felicity winked at Sammy before hurrying away. See you in church tomorrow. And I'll make an appointment first thing Monday morning, Tabby. When it was just the two sisters left, Tabby hurried back inside, and Sammy followed. I want to know everything about the guy you're dating. Sammy shrugged. He is the owner of the new bookstore in town, next to Bob's Burger Barn. I told you I was going out with him. You told me you were going to go on one date with him. You're seeing each other now? It seems to be moving along pretty fast. He brought pizza last night, and he stayed and helped me decorate. He plowed the parking lot on Thursday night when he thought I wasn't watching. Sammy frowned. I don't know where we're going if we're going anywhere, but I think a lot of him, and he gets my motor running, if you know what I mean. Tabby laughed. I know exactly what you mean. Well, I want to be kept in the loop. Don't run off and get married without me. I won't. How could I? You're my favorite sister. Wasn't I your least favorite sister the other day? Both. You are definitely both. Well, I'm leaving you, then. Is everything cleaned up enough? Tabby looked around her, making sure all the trash was thrown away and they weren't leaving Sammy with a huge mess to clean up. Definitely. I'm good from here. And I need to get to bed, because church is tomorrow. Are you seeing Barry tomorrow? Sammy blushed. He's going to sit with me at church. That's huge. And then we're going to see a movie. Probably get lunch. I'm not sure what all we'll do, but whatever it is, we'll be doing it together. I can't wait to meet the man that makes my sister blush like she's 16 again. That's so awesome. Sammy smiled and watched her sister hurry out to her mommy van. Be careful on the ice. I don't want to deliver that baby tonight. You won't. I'm careful. As Tabby drove away, Sammy thought about how very happy she was for her sister and the love she'd found with Arch. Hopefully, that love was just around the corner for her. Asterisk. Sammy had just about decided that Barry wasn't going to come to church when he slid into the pew beside her. Morning, he whispered softly. His jeans had been traded in for a pair of slacks, and he wore a cowboy tie. He looked good to Sammy. Morning. I figured you weren't coming, she whispered back. Nah. I just had to find my dress boots. They were in a box in the top of my closet. How did they get there? Sammy shrugged, turning to the front as Pastor Ben walked up to the pulpit. She wasn't sure if she should be happy or disappointed that Barry wasn't going to be treated to the full Brother Anthony special service. The talk that week was on forgiveness, something everyone needed, in Sammy's opinion. It was hard not to hold a grudge against people who had done her wrong, and she was sure others were the same. After the service, several different couples surrounded them. Sammy met Dallas's eyes across the room, and she hoped that the other woman would see her silent plea. Felicity was there, introducing Barry to Ellen. Barry owns the bookstore here in town. Ellen nodded. I did most of the renovations on the building. We've been working together for months. Hi, Barry. Barry grinned. Hey. Finally, Dallas came over and smiled at Sammy. Barry, you remember Austin, and this is our daughter, Odessa. Barry nodded. It's good to see you. It was obvious the other couple was rescuing them from the swarm of people around them. Austin asked, "Are you still planning to have lunch with us?" He held little Odessa in his arms. Since both of them were named after Texas cities, they had to follow the tradition with their daughter. Yes. Sammy answered for both of them. She was thrilled with the excuse to get away from prying eyes. As they left the church, she breathed a sigh of relief. I didn't think we'd ever get out of there. Barry laughed. They were definitely interested in who I was. I told you sitting next to me would be almost like announcing our engagement. Sammy shook her head. Small towns are notorious for situations like that. I see, he said, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. What would happen if I kissed you in the church parking lot? Would you then be pregnant with my child? Dallas laughed. She would. Oh no. Barry said, grinning at Sammy. Sammy sighed. You joke about it, but it's my reputation on the line here. Yeah, you'd be a slut, but I'd just be a ladies' man. The five of them headed to the diner to eat and sat down in a booth off to one side of the room. Odessa sat in a high chair, eating crackers. While they ate, Sammy asked Dallas about the type of romance she liked, and they talked a lot. Austin talked animatedly with Barry about the rodeo, and it became a men's discussion and a women's discussion. After they'd eaten, Barry took Sammy's hand. We're going to head to the movies. What's playing? Austin asked. Barry shrugged. Who cares as long as we can sit in the back row and make out? Not in front of my baby. Dallas said with a laugh. She's a cutie. Barry reached out and toyed with her fingers. Odessa pulled away and buried her face in her mother's shoulder. I delivered her, Sammy said softly. You did? Barry looked at Sammy, connecting what she did now. I guess I knew you delivered babies, but until I saw one you'd brought into the world, it didn't really hit home. I can believe that. Sammy grinned at him, so glad he was there with her. We need to get this one home for a nap, Dallas said with a yawn. And maybe her mama, too. Definitely her mama, too. All mothers need naps. Dallas laughed. Did you hear that, Austin? I need a nap. Austin reached over and took Odessa. Let's get home. Enjoy your movie, if you ever figure out what it is. Oh, trust me. We will. Sammy shook her head as they walked away. I can't believe you told them we were going to sit in the back row and make out. What were you thinking? Barry shrugged. I figured they'd understand completely. He led her to his truck, and they drove the short distance to the movie theater. Is this one of the businesses that Sly owns? I have no idea. I cannot keep up with everything that man is buying in this town. He's crazy. He bought 2 tickets for anything but a kid movie. Sammy couldn't believe he'd actually put it that way. People are really going to think we're here to sit in the back and make out. Well, I got the impression you weren't ready for things to go to the next level, and if we spend too much time alone, I'm sure they will. So we'll sit at the back of the movie theater and make out there instead of at your place or mine. Much less dangerous. She couldn't believe him, but she couldn't think of a good response either. I don't even know what to say to that. Thank me for sparing your morals, he said, leading her into the theater, where he handed her a bucket of popcorn and her drink. Are we going to be able to eat popcorn and drink pop if we're too busy making out? She asked. A woman 2 rows ahead of them turned around and glared at her. Sammy was mortified. I'm kidding, she called out. No, she's not. Barry said. You're making me crazy, Barry. That's okay. You make me crazy, too. He put his arm around her and dug a hand into the popcorn tub she was holding. Did you catch the name of the movie we're seeing? The woman turned and glared at them again. Sammy knew her because she was one of the checkers at the grocery store. Stop that. Sammy hissed at Barry. He shrugged. We'll figure it out. Maybe. She shook her head. I'm not sure I'm going to agree to be seen in public with you after today. All right. I'll be alone with you all you want. That wasn't what I meant, and you know it. I'll take it how I want to take it. And I like my way an awful lot. Of course you do. After the movie, Sammy still had no idea what she'd seen, but she knew she'd annoyed the blonde checker from the supermarket. They went to his truck. I can't believe you embarrassed me like that. I can't believe you spent the entire movie with your lips glued to mine, Barry said, shaking his head. I thought better of you than that. What movie did we see anyway? Does it really matter? She laughed helplessly. Until today, I thought you were this really nice guy, and now I realize you're like all other men. Nah. Don't say that. He clutched his chest with one hand, acting as if she'd broken his heart. I do like you, Barry Hamilton. You make me see the world in totally new ways. Or not see it at all, because you're too busy kissing me to care about it as it passes you by. That could be true, she sighed. So are you dumping me at my truck now? She wasn't quite ready for the day to end, but she needed to be mindful of her work the next day. I have not yet begun to date you. And that means? It means I think we should go back to your place. We can just spend time together. Watch a movie, maybe. Sammy let out a bark of laughter. I just tried to watch a movie. I don't know anything that happened in it. That's because you weren't paying attention. He shook his head. I can't take you anywhere. Okay, we'll go back to my place. Take me to my truck, though, so I will have it when I need it. I don't know if I can be apart from you for that long. The back of his hand went to his forehead, and he sighed dramatically for effect. You'll have to be, because I'll need my truck tomorrow. All right. All right. I'll take you to your truck. Are you going to cook supper for me while we watch our movie? Sure. I have nothing better to do. Barry smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. He drove her to the church's parking lot and left her at her truck. There. Happy now? Sure. Why wouldn't I be? Sammy blew a kiss as she got out of his truck and rushed to her own. The snow had finally stopped, but it was bitter cold. See you at my place. She got into her truck and started it, letting it heat up for a few minutes before leaving the parking lot. The whole time, she was very aware that he was right behind her and watching everything she said and did. She pulled into the small parking lot of the clinic and jumped out, running to the door with her key, so she could get where it was warm. She hadn't been warm since the theater, since both trucks had been cold. Inside, she hurried to the fireplace and started a fire, hearing him come in and close the door. I'll start the fire while you start supper, he offered. Almost done, she replied, standing up from the fireplace. Soup okay? I was thinking of a thick baked potato soup tonight. I have bacon and cheese for it as well. He nodded emphatically. Sounds delicious. I'll figure out what movie we should watch. Let's not spend money on a movie you have no intentions of watching, she said, shaking her head. We'll watch it, he protested, knowing full well they wouldn't. There was something about little Samantha Ross that made his blood boil. Fine, find a movie, and I will get supper started. I have Netflix, and it's already signed on. And Amazon Prime. And Hulu. You sure do love your streaming services. I hate trying to watch network television. It's cheaper to have all of those services and watch whatever I want when I want. She pulled potatoes out of a container on her counter and ran water over them before peeling them. Let me see what you like, and I'll go from there. Barry sat down with her remote and started pushing buttons. He wasn't a huge fan of smart TVs, because they were usually smarter than he was, but he'd give it a try. 30 minutes later, when she sat beside him while the potatoes boiled, he turned on the show he'd chosen. You had this on Amazon, so I figured we'd watch it together. She laughed. I have it memorized. Who doesn't? This way we won't worry about missing the movie. The opening credits for The Princess Bride rolled across the screen, and she snuggled into his side contentedly. I wanted to marry Wesley when I was a little girl. You did? Not Prince Humperdinck? Oh, please. He was the villain of the story. Well, him and Count Rugen. No one wanted either of them. They were evil. Shoo. This is the part where she calls him farm boy and he goes off to find his fortune. But he's kidnapped by the dread pirate Roberts, and the dread pirate Roberts never takes a prisoner. He shook his head. You have seen this show one too many times. I don't want you to be bored, though. You don't? He shook his head and grabbed her by the waist, pulling her close to him. I'll distract you. And he did. Very well, actually. Within moments, she forgot about the soup, the movie, and everything else around her. She only existed for his touch and his kisses.